it's me, Dahlia. Thanks for joining me today. Today we will be recreating this card using the Happy Elephant stamp set that I got from AliExpress some time ago. If I can locate it, I will definitely leave a link down below, but any little character stamp set will work. I did pull out a balloon die and string from my stash, and using a spare piece of white cardstock, I am laying out my scene as I envision it. I do not pre-sketch. So I pulled out my American Crafts Everyday paper stack and decided on this pattern right here. This piece of paper we're actually going to cut down to 5 1/4 by 4, which gives us a 1/8 of an inch border all around. I'm going to finish that up right now. Now I purposely cut it where the pattern was going vertically. I wanted them to be symmetrical to the elephants. Now you'll also notice that my elephants are all different shades of gray. I did this purposely. So I pulled out this die, and my thought was to have the elephants peeking from the windows, but this particular die, the windows were a little too small. So I pulled out a nesting set die that I also got from AliExpress using the smallest one, and I thought that fit perfectly. The elephants can actually fit. So pulling out another piece of cardstock, this is actually the one that we're going to cut into. I laid the die down, always starting from the edges because it's easier to make it more symmetrical that way. But in hindsight, as you'll see when I go to do the second cut, I should have taken a ruler and kind of given myself some guidelines. So here I am struggling, trying to see how I can do this without totally destroying this. So you see I pulled out my ruler. So if you're going to try to create this card, take that little tip and give yourself some guidelines where you can actually rest the die so they'll all be even. Yeah, I was really struggling here. But I wasn't going to give up on the card. So I just trust my judgment, and we're going to cut into it and pray for the best. So here it is. It didn't come out too bad. If you look really closely, you'll see that it's off by a smidgen. So I'm hoping that when I add the elephants into it, it'll just disguise it. But it didn't look too bad. So I laid that on top of the cardstock, and that's what we're working with. So I decided to trim this one down 1/4 of an inch on all sides. And I don't know what I was thinking, and I ended up cutting the top portion of the card twice. I should have just left it alone, but it's easily rectifiable. It should have been 1/8 of an inch, and I ended up cutting another 1/4. So when I laid it down, you can see I have too much border on top and bottom. So I did have to take that designer paper and just cut 1/8 of an inch off. And yep, so that's what we're working with. So I wanted that white cardstock to be raised up. So I took this foam tape that I bought from a dollar store, nothing too fancy. And it is kind of on the wide side. So I ended up doubling the layers of it because it is very thin. And the reason why I did that was because I was going to fold the foam paper on itself. So that was going to give me double height, just so I can cut into it and cut it in half so it wouldn't stick to my scissors. So I'm just adding those pieces in there. And then what's left over I'm using on the bottom. So it worked out very well. Minimal waste. We can figure it out. So I'm going to take the release paper off of the backs of that. And then we're going to center that on our designer paper. Now with this foam tape, again, I don't buy the very expensive one. You don't really see it, but once it sticks, and there's no take backs on it. So this is the hardest part, trying to decide where I want these elephants to go. I was struggling a little bit here because it just didn't seem balanced to me. I like the idea of some of the ears overlapping on the white portion of the stock, the paper stock, or even the tail So I just decided to move on, and let me just add the foam squares in the back. I fidgeted around with it a little bit more. I even took that center one and suspended him up in there, and I was like, no, that's not going to work. He has to be grounded. But I'm going to move on. So out of that same designer paper, I cut out 2 sets of balloons, 2 different sizes. And I purposely cut it so the pattern was going horizontal this time, just to add a little bit more interest and tie in the paper in the back. Because once the elephants are down, they're just peeking through behind them. And I knew that the elephant that had his trunk up in the air was the one that was going to hold my balloon. So I'm fidgeting around with it, and I realize he can't sit in the middle, because then where am I going to put my sentiment? So off to the corner he goes. Now the other 2 elephants just have this curious look about them, wondering what's going on, looking to the next window. And I thought it was so whimsical and so cute. So yeah, I'm still fidgeting around with that. So now 1 balloon was all I decided on, because then I wouldn't have enough space to add my sentiment. And then I'm finally happy with that placement right there. So cutting out a banner die, out of one of my banner dies, if that makes any kind of sense. I did use spun sugar, I believe is what it's called, a distress oxide ink, just to color in that white banner, to tie it in to the designer paper, stamped Best Wishes, using tuxedo black ink from Memento. And then now I'm just going to start taking those release papers off the foam squares that I added behind the elephants, and just adding a touch of glue to one of the trunks so I can attach the balloon. I thought the string was just a little too long, so I trimmed that down. And then we're going to mount him on the card. And I thought that looked super adorable. Yep, so making sure it's all aligned, and in his home he goes. And then just adding a little wet glue behind the balloon so it can stay flush to the card. We're going to finish up the last of the elephants and get him in his place. So he's looking to the left, wondering what is he holding. I thought it just, I just really fell in love with it. Adding some foam squares behind the sentiment banner. Gonna add a little glue there as well. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. I don't know why. I just don't want the card, when it's being mailed or touched, to fall apart. So to add a little sparkle and shine, I did pull out my Spectrum Noir glitter pen, and just wanted to add some more focus to the elephant. So I thought it just finished it off. It looks so, so cute. So now pulling out an A2 size card base, from my stash. I decided on this dusty rose color. I thought it tied in very well. Using my tape runner, I'm just going to mount that onto the card base, being mindful that it is centered as best as I can get it. And there it is. All done. That's our card for today. So I did add some additional pictures at the end here. Here are some close-ups of the card that we just made today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Links for the supplies that I use will also be provided in the description. As always, thank you for watching. Bye.